Today, I want to talk about something that we do not think about nearly enough, and that's the legacy we're building right now in real time. Welcome to season 2 of the Enduring Legacy podcast. When I'm talking about legacies, I'm not talking about institutions that are created in somebody's name or honor, the great achievement of people of renown that are written throughout, you know, books for centuries. I'm talking about the small little things that we do every day, the things that we create in our lives and we leave impacts on others around us. The small everyday legacy that we make. That's the habits that we have. That's getting up when we're not feeling like we want to. That's taking our children to school. That's being there for a friend. That's helping others when they're in need. All these things are also legacy, and I argue are a more important legacy that we all have access to and something that we can all do and build on every day. When I think about legacy, I think about my mother, for example. My mother did not go to college and get a master's degree or became some philanthropist or a person who people have written many books about. But what she did and has accomplished in her life has changed our lives forever. This woman, when she was young, moved from the South and she created a life for her children that kept us protected, that kept us from any harm, that gave us an environment for us to thrive and to become the people that we are today. I wouldn't be who I am today without my mother and without my father. And when I really think about it, I wouldn't be who I am today without the impact of so many people around me. And those are the things we have to think about. Like we are where we are today through the sacrifices and the actions of others. And again, a person might look at this person or see my mom and think, okay, well, I don't know her name. She doesn't have like a following on social media or anything like that. But just think about it. Because the actions of my mother, I was able to go to school. I was able to go to college. I was able to become a scholar. I was able to teach hundreds and actually about, I want to say almost 1,000 different people as when I taught over in Asia or the classes I taught in America to people. All the impact that I have and I've made in the world today came directly by the actions specifically of my mother. But the thing about that, who instilled the confidence in her for her to move and make the choice that she made? Then who instilled things in that person? All of these things are connected. And we often overlook these kind of actions. We often overlook these impacts because we don't see them as an idea of being something worthy of legacy. But when you really think about it, that is legacy. That is what's important. I think it's easier for a person to give money or put their name on a building than it is to actually do the right thing every day to leave a positive imprint that changes the lives of people for hundreds of years. What I mean by hundreds of years, think about it. My mother had me. I have my children. And my children hopefully will have their children. When you really think about that in numbers, that's like 100 years or more. So the impact of her actions, how she raised me, how my wife's parents raised her, all those things have a powerful effect, butterfly effect, if you want to look at it that way, for generations to come. And that's what I mean by enduring legacy, that we're here not by accident. The fact that we are here, someone had to endure, someone had to succeed to get us where we are today. And what I want you to pull from that is just the power, just from that concept. Not necessarily the power just of those who came before us, but the power of where you sit right now in the present and the effect and impact that you have on the future for generations to come. That's amazing. And I just think more of time we need to think about that and just think about the influence we have over time and for maybe even centuries. Every time when I see someone say they move here from a different country and maybe they're doing a job that may not be so glorious, or people may not think it's that glorious, such as somebody probably, I don't know, somebody cleaning an apartment or someone who's doing like work outside or whatever it may be. And sometimes people look down upon these people. What I see is a person who has done a very hard thing to change their family forever. That person who came from another place, you know how hard that is to come from another place and live somewhere else for the rest of your life, to come to a place where you may not even know the culture or the language well, and to build your life in this new place. That's very difficult to do. And I think a lot of times, especially say here in America, we take that for granted because often Americans don't really go anywhere or live in other places. But I know foreign languages, and it's very hard to speak another language fluently enough to navigate through society. The courage, the resolve, the the amount of grit it takes for them to do what they did, and then the benefit and the impact they're going to have on their children by the opportunities they just providing by having their kids here, right? And changing just their family line. To me, that's amazing. And that's one of the most powerful things in the world that we just every day just kind of just overlook. This different concept of legacy is happening every day, every moment in the small places going, it's not known, it's not spotlighted in magazines. But it is to me the true definition and the idea of legacy and impact, something that is attainable to all of us. So now thinking beyond the past or the present, let's think about the future. Let's think about knowing that we create legacy every day, knowing that we hold power between the past and the future by being in the present, knowing that it's really about thinking about, what can we intentionally do to make sure the legacy that we leave on is something that's good and that's positive and that greatly benefits our family line and others for centuries to come. And again, these don't have to be big changes. Honestly, the best ones are just tiny, small changes that we make every day. They can be things as breaking generational curses. They can be things such as understanding finances better for yourself and budgeting. They can be, adopting a habits for yourself that then you pass on to the children. That can be learning how to manage your emotion and becoming more emotionally intelligent. They can be, working with your family differently, that you create a more of a tight knit unit. Like these things don't have to be something large and grandiose. The small changes, these 1 degree differences, are what we need to focus on. And what I mean by 1 degree, and kind of like what I really focus on in terms of this podcast, is these 1 degree of changes have a large and impactful effect down the line. So let's just look at the idea of the 1 degree. There's an idea that if you had a bow and arrow and you were aiming it from, like, I don't know, say 100 yards towards the target, and you're aiming it, but then you're just 1 degree off of holding that bow and arrow. When you actually release that arrow, as it flies meter after meter, it'll get more and more off track, right? And that degree will change greater and greater over time. Well, this is the idea I'm talking about. These small, tiny changes that we make in our lives and how they endure over time, right? So if you make a small change in a behavior, if you move to a place for better opportunities for your family, if you feel like moving differently in terms of how you engage with the different people in your family, all these things can be considered like a 1 degree of difference. And these things will have greater and greater impact as time moves forward, much greater than you could ever imagine. I can tell you right now, for myself, looking at that for my father, he loves reading, and he instilled the power of the written word in me. And that comes directly from the actions of my father. And from that, it influenced how I move with my children in terms of what I have them read, how we talk about certain things, and what we explore in terms of intellectual ideas. All these things came from the actions of this man who was in the military, who just loved books. He didn't go to college himself. But because of these actions of what I consider one of the most wisest men in the world, to me, it influenced my love for knowledge and wisdom. And without him, I most likely wouldn't have that. But without that, my children wouldn't have that from me. And I would assume, if and hopefully my children have children in the future, my grandchildren, I would instill that in them. And it would move on and on and on. That is the power of the concept of the 1 degree difference. So let's quickly talk about the concept of the great chain. So this is not maybe not the best sounding term, but I think it's really appropriate for this podcast and the idea of ancestry and also legacy. Ancestry sits in the past, legacy sits in the future, and we sit currently in the present, making the 1 degree difference. And when you look at that, it's almost like a chain where we're connected by links to the past, the present, and the future. And if any of those links become unbroken, the chain no longer is connected. And for us to be here today, someone had to be a link in this chain to keep it moving forward so we exist. If they did not exist, if they did not succeed, if they did not endure, then we just simply won't be here. It would be like if you watch Back to the Future or Michael J. Fox, and he had the part where he was like fading, his family was fading from the pictures, his siblings, because his parents didn't get together, right? And he had to make it where his parents got together and fell in love for him to exist. That's, when you really think about it, it's kind of like that we are here through the endurance of previous family members, of our ancestors. And so when you think about their idea to endure and move forward, that concept of the great chain just makes a lot of sense to me. And I hope it makes sense to you. You are so important, because without you in that link, there's no one here to steward on the generations that hopefully comes for thousands of years after you're gone. To me, that's a powerful, like, mental concept that I hope provides you some sense of understanding of your importance and significance in the world. So this season, we're exploring all sorts of stuff, from ancestry to ancestral practices to figuring out ways of better understanding our identity, to parenting, how to become better storytellers and collecting the stories of our loved ones around us, and making 1 degree improvements in our lives. This season is more deeper, more personal, and more intentional. Remember, you're not alone. You're already building legacy, and let's do it intentionally together. That's it for this episode. So for your 1 degree shift this week, think to yourself and ask your question: what 1 degree thing that I'm doing in my life to make a change and impact on my family for the future to come? That's it for this episode. I'll see you next time on the Enduring Legacy podcast. I'm your host, Tony Reyes.